Well, I am Jim Ogden. I'm the staff historian at Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park. And I was a history major in college and wanted to work not just in history, but in history at a historic site. And what's the big thing in your view from the northern tip of Lookout Mountain? Moccasin Bend. And so Moccasin Bend is essentially this peninsula of land that is located just to the west and southwest of Chattanooga and right at the northern tip of Lookout Mountain, and has served as a home for people for those more than 12,000 years. If you look there, you will find archaeological resources, and indeed they did. And in 1950, they get Congress to pass an act which authorizes the Secretary of the Interior to accept up to 1,400 acres on Moccasin Bend for Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park. Now, there was a proposal to cut a channel through the narrow part of Moccasin Bend to reduce the length of the Tennessee River by 6 miles, and it didn't happen. And so as the 1950s passed, the city, county, and state all say, well, we have all this acreage out on Moccasin Bend. What are we going to do with it? And a proposal is made that on the state property, a mental health hospital will be built. The city, county, and state say, what are we going to do with our acreage? And one proposal is a wastewater treatment plant, a sewer plant, and that gets located out on Moccasin Bend. In the same time, in the 1950s, the interstate highway system is being developed. So the decision was to haul Cameron Hill from downtown Chattanooga and dump it into the Tennessee River to create a shelf for Interstate 24. That's done. Well, if you dump land in the river for Interstate 24, you narrow the river up. What's that going to do to the current in that part of the river? It's going to speed it up. And so they brought a Mississippi River dredge up and carved off up to 400 feet of Moccasin Bend, destroying American Indian archaeological sites at the same time. Someone proposes a golf course, and that comes about. Eventually, the police department and the sheriff's department say they need a place, a firing range, and their city and county property, and it gets located there. And the idea of industrial development continues. An asphalt plant was proposed in the 1970s and 1980s, a mixed-use development of different sorts. They were going to carve a channel off of the river and have a big lake or lagoon in the center of the bend so that there would be more waterfront or property with water frontage. So all of these different proposals are made over time, but at the same time, there are still people saying, no, that is not the right thing for Moccasin Bend. The history continued to survive in the 1980s of the effort to protect it for its historic purposes, which goes along into the 1990s and eventually culminates with the passage of the legislation in 2003. And now one of the issues is how do we protect that history and tell that story with those other uses on the bend. And so working with the city and county to potentially find a new home for the firing range, working with the state of Tennessee to potentially find a new home for the state mental health hospital. And just in the last few weeks, the state has announced that they would seek a new location for the hospital, not rebuild on that site. If we look at where we came from, good, bad, or indifferent, it can give us some guidance as to where we might wind up in the future and how to get to that point. It continues to be a project that really requires the involvement of the public, and ideally the younger public, to help carry this into the future.